Hey, this is Chris. Hope you're doing well, and welcome to Popcorn Finance, the show where we discuss finance and about the time it takes to make a bag of popcorn. You know, it's that time of year again. We're all working on our taxes. I'm sure having a great time thinking about all the random little things that go along with this time of the year. But this is also a time where many of us are probably going to be receiving some type of tax refund. I know there's a lot of things you can do with it. And, I'm not always one to say you need to do something responsible with this money. Maybe if there's something you've been wanting to buy or something you've been wanting to do, I don't see anything wrong with you using some of the money for that. But I think you should hold at least a portion of that to take on three big things. And this depends on where you are in your financial journey. Let's just run through them. These are the three things I think that you could do with your tax refund to do, something nice for your finances and get yourself in a much stronger financial place. Thing number one, this is something that I stress all the time. Jumpstart that emergency fund. I think if you asked most people, they would say that they want to do a better job of saving. But let's face it, life gets in the way. We always have something that's going to pop up that derails us. It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to many of you. But the good thing with a tax refund is that this is usually probably the largest amount of money you've received at one time all year long, which makes it a great time to use a portion of this to start an emergency fund. And I know opening a savings account is not super exciting. It's boring. I know it's boring, but I think the last 2 years have shown us how important it is to have a strong emergency fund in place. Now, typical rules for how big your emergency fund should be, it varies, but it's usually somewhere between 6 to 12 months of your expenses. And these are your mandatory expenses, the things that you're going to have to spend money on regardless of what's happening. This is things like your rent, your mortgage, car payments, car insurance, food, utilities, the things you have to spend money on. And that's what you use to calculate how much you'll need to put into this emergency fund. So you look at what 1 month of these expenses will be. You take that number, you multiply it by 6 for the low end of things, 12 if you want to be on the higher end of things when it comes to your emergency fund size. And that's your target. That's what you're aiming for, because the whole point of this thing is to keep your household running in the event you might lose your job or you just have some large unexpected expense that could possibly derail what you have going on. And the great thing is the IRS makes this process pretty easy. They allow you to split your refund to up to 3 separate accounts. So you can choose to have one of these accounts be your savings account. And that way you make sure that money that you're getting your tax refund, at least a portion of it, goes to start building that emergency fund. All right, so let's take a quick break here. But when we get back, we'll hop into 2 more things that you can do with your tax refund to really help get your finances in order. I host another podcast called This is Awkward along with my co-host Allison. And on this show, we discuss your awkward money situations like this one right here.
I was sharing with a coworker about buying my kids some new shoes and clothes. I recently paid off all my debt, way to go, E, and want to buy things only in cash without using my savings or a credit card. So I mentioned I was going to buy them clothing and new shoes with Friday's paycheck. But the look I got was a look like, you can't buy them shoes or clothes. You actually have to wait until Friday.
So if you want to find out how we would handle this awkward money situation, or you want to send in your own situation for us to discuss on the podcast, search for This is Awkward on the podcast app you're listening to this show right now, or go to the show notes to find the link. All right, you just got that nice big tax refund. What are some things that you can do with it other than build your emergency fund? Because maybe you've already done that. You've been listening to the podcast. You're like, Chris, I got it. My emergency fund is already set. What else can I do with this money? Thing number 2 you can do, attack your debt. Now, with debt, your worst enemy is interest. And so that's why it's in your best interest. That wasn't supposed to be a pun, but I guess it's kind of a pun. It's in your best interest to pay down this debt, because every dollar you pay towards this debt is one less dollar that'll be sitting there accruing interest. Your tax refund can be a great way to put a nice big dent in your debt, especially your high interest debt, which would be on things like credit cards, because with credit cards, your interest rates can easily be well above 20%. And the thing that makes this interest really damaging is that it compounds. And what that means is that they charge you interest on the interest that they just charged you the month before. And that cycle just keeps continuing month after month after month. And so that means if you're getting charged 20% interest on your credit card, for every $100 you have sitting there, that's more than $20 in interest annually you're charged. If you have a balance of $1,000, that means you're getting hit with more than $200 each year in interest. And so if you have the opportunity to take some of this money you're getting back, this tax refund, and throwing it towards some of that high interest credit card debt, I think it's one of the best things you can do to set yourself up and really put yourself in a strong position, because every dollar you put towards it is really more valuable than the money you're putting in. Now, if you're in a position where you've already taken care of these first two things, you got your emergency fund in place and you've already attacked that high interest debt, the third thing you might want to consider doing with that tax refund is start investing. Now, I hope if you've been listening to this podcast for some time now, I've convinced you that investing is a really good thing to do. It's one of the best ways of reaching that goal of retirement, because your money's going to grow much faster than it ever could have just sitting in a savings account. But if you've been nervous and you haven't taken the leap to becoming an investor, your tax refund can be a great opportunity for you to get into the world of investing. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can use that money to open up an IRA, which is an individual retirement account. And this is great if your employer doesn't offer a 401k plan or 403b, 457, all those numbers that are referring to very similar retirement accounts. An IRA is something that you can open up on your own. Or say you already have a 401k in place. That tax refund can be a great way to start upping that contribution you've been putting in, because you can use that larger refund you have sitting there to offset higher contributions that you'll put into your plan. Because the thing is, you can't take, I'll just call it outside money, and put it into a 401k. You can only use money that you're earning from your actual day job. So you can't take that refund and directly put it in there, but you can use it to offset the larger contributions that you might want to make for a little while, because you have this large chunk of money that's made its way into your bank account because of your tax refund. So these are just three things that you can do with that tax refund to make a really big and significant impact to your financial life, because it's not often that you have a large chunk of money coming in that you can use for really whatever it is that you want. Now, make sure you still carve out a piece of that to have some fun with. Do something you really enjoy. That'll be your reward for being very responsible with the rest of that money. But choose one of these things. If you haven't already gotten your refund and done something else with it, choose one of these things to set yourself up for the future. Now, if you end up choosing one of these three options, I want to hear about it. You can send me a message over on Instagram by reaching out to me at Popcorn Finance Podcast. Or if you like, I don't do the whole social media thing, you can send me an email to questions@popcornfinance.com. For this week's Kernel, normally I would pick one listener and just give them a shout out on the podcast. But with everything going on, I just want to take this time to just acknowledge those listeners who may be in the Ukraine, or maybe your listeners who have family in the Ukraine, or maybe you've just been following along, and like myself, your heart just goes out to the people dealing with this really horrible, very difficult situation. I'm not an expert on the situation by any means, but I know I still have been emotionally impacted by what's going on there. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time here on the podcast just to say I'm thinking of all of you and your families during this very, very difficult time. As always, I wanted to thank each of you for joining me here for another bag of popcorn. Wishing you all the best, and I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, boy, keep it poppin' like Mary Poppins.